Chapter 10, in which there is a Sir Mix-a-Lot reference. I'd gone a lot out of my way to look for Parker at her locker between classes, which, if he'd known, would only have strengthened Fitz's smitten theory. She wasn't there, though, so I walked on to algebra, mentally preparing myself for the scholastic equivalent of the Baton Death March. Class began like always. Mr. Strain asked us to take out our homework and called out the number of a random problem. Then we copied that problem on a separate sheet of paper and turned it in. The homework component equaled 1/4 of our final grade, and more than half the time, I'd turned in a blank sheet of paper. Thankfully, Mr. Strain didn't take much interest in individual students, so he never stopped me after class to discuss my perilously close to failing grade, and or if I'd spoken to Sadie Evans lately. After homework check, which I actually passed, but only because I could see Emma Bauer's paper and copied her answer while she wasn't looking, Mr. Strain began solving the previous night's homework on the blackboard. He did this every day, and it was mind-numbing. Sometimes we'd try and ask random questions to get him off track, but he was relentless. The man would only stop solving algebra problems 1 minute before the bell rang, and only to assign more algebra problems. Looking back, I think he may have been some sort of math robot the state purchased in an attempt to save money on teacher pensions. We were 10 minutes and 6 problems into class, and Mr. Strain stood before his blackboard, droning on about coefficients and constants, while I stared at the clock, trying to break my personal record for breath holding. 1 minute and 37 seconds. When we heard a loud knock at the door. Mr. Strain looked perturbed and set down his chalk, and in his robotic voice said, "Enter." And in stepped Parker Hathaway, wearing a tight t-shirt that read, "God hates t-shirts." We all stared at her for what felt like an eternity before Mr. Strain finally said, "Yes?" Parker scanned the room until she saw me and smiled. Then she held up a slip of paper and said, "Principal Denham needs to see Edwin Green in her office?" Mr. Strain looked at me, and the rest of the class looked at me. Then he turned back to his blackboard and resumed the problem he'd been working on. I took this as my sign to leave, so I packed my books and nearly tripped on my way toward the door where Parker winked before handing me the slip of paper. On it, she'd written the lyrics to Baby Got Back.